I think we need to get some elevator music or something to play before our meetings start while everybody's waiting. Maybe we could just all hum a tune or something.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Jennifer, will you please do the roll call for committee members to establish a quorum?
Sure. Regent Mendoza,
Present.
Regent Johnston,
Here.
and Regent Perisker.
Saw that she added something in the chat.
I thought I saw her on as well, but
I mean, with 2 out of 3.
I see her on,
Okay.
and that
Good
concludes
morning.
roll.
you want to call her name again, please, Jennifer?
Regent Perisker,
Yes, I'm here. I will be on video in a bit. My laptop is getting restarted. If you may want to add me again in case you see me.
Okay, thank you. Hey, as a reminder, all meeting attendees will be recorded and included in the meeting minutes. So our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the September 18th BASC meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I can second.
Okay, discussion or revisions? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next up is consideration of items of the board consent agenda. The first item is a report from Misty Knox on the All-Star High School Awards. Misty?
So for the All-Star High School Awards, this presentation for the board is going to provide the high schools with an opportunity to receive recognition. And I will defer to the agenda items for that presentation materials. And I've invited the individuals being recognized to live stream that agenda item as well. So just a little bit of backstory, if you will. The All-Star High School program recognizes and promotes best practices in post-secondary activities. So these schools provide opportunities for Apply Kansas, which is application events where they're supporting our high school students during those applications for post-secondary planning. Then they also provide events for financial aid completion and FSA ID creation. And lastly, during their academic year, they provide senior signing events where they're recognizing all post-secondary plans of our high school students. So a very awesome opportunity to really elevate a college-going environment or atmosphere at those schools.
Thank you for that, Misty. I did want to follow up on the Apply Kansas Day. I believe we had talked before about showing some kind of data that would show the yield that we had from that day last year. I think we're going to be looking at that in the spring. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the Apply Free Days was October 7th through the 9th. We're currently in the process of collecting some aggregate data from institutions that requests will be sent out within the next couple weeks with a due date of December 20th. So that data in aggregate form will be presented in the spring. Our DRP, our department, is working with IR staff to allow this to funnel through the campus IR departments for a better capture of the yield of the Apply Free Days students and applications.
Okay, thank you.
Misty, do we have any data from last year's free apply days?
The Apply Free Days presentation was provided in February, if I remember right, to the board. However, that didn't capture any of the yield because, you know, with only 1 year of data, we didn't have, you know, they weren't starting. We didn't have that data yet.
So this is really the first full year that we can collect data and get some sense of the yield that the initiative's producing.
Yeah, the first Apply Free Days event held in Kansas was November 7th through the 9th of 2023. So those students would have potentially started either that spring or this fall semester here. So that data then is being collected at this time.
Thank you, Misty. Do you have any other questions or comments for Misty? Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we move this item to the discussion agenda for the November 20th board meeting. I don't know if we need to vote on that or not.
I don't think so, Regent Mendoza. This is, I think we can move items around. So I'll see that staff and I will see that it's placed on the discussion agenda.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, the second item is a program from Kansas State University for a Bachelor of Science in Cyber Systems Design and Dynamics. I believe Dr. Tanya Gonzalez will be stepping in for Provost Mendez to present on this item on behalf of Kansas State University. Dr. Gonzalez?
Thank you. Good morning, Regents. Kansas State University is proposing a bachelor's in cyber systems design and dynamics. This will come from our Department of Integrated Studies in our College of Technology and Aviation on our Salina campus. We're really excited about this program. It is a result actually of our annual program review and revitalization conversations. After looking at data of their programs, they decided to develop this new program to market, which allows students to create engaging virtual environments, immersive applications, predictive data systems, cyber physical systems, and interactive media. This new program actually replaces 2 outdated programs, which will be discontinued if this program is approved. And those are programs in computer systems technology and digital media technology degrees. And the other thing we're really excited about is that this is a major component of the $41 million Kansas Center for Advanced Immersive Research, emerging research for emerging systems, which is currently being developed and built for the K-State Salina campus. We do have Michael Aiken, who's a faculty member from K-State Salina Department of Integrated Studies and who is the major leader developing this program. If you have additional questions, he is here to answer those for you.
Regent Mendoza, I do have a question in, it's a great program. I saw the details and I really like it. I do want to understand, why are we replacing an existing computer sciences related? Is there low attendance? Yeah, just wanted to find out that.
Michael, do you want to go ahead and take that?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for hosting me. Yes. So our current computer system technology program, it was a kind of a couple things through our program review. We collected a lot of data from students that have graduated the program, current students, and then also with our industry advisory board members. And we kind of felt like with the new K. Aries Center, which is coming online, it'll be a kind of a one-of-a-kind facility in the country, really dedicated to immersive technologies such as VR, AR, machine learning, AI, and spatial computing. And so the current curriculum with our computer systems technology was very web design, web development based. And we felt that that was a technology that's kind of on its way out through market analysis. And we had seen some drops in the enrollment numbers in that program. So we felt like this was kind of the perfect time to revitalize that program and kind of move into these new areas of technology that industry is really embracing through immersive design, machine learning, AI, and spatial computing.
Right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Appreciate that explanation.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
On the professors that are teaching these courses, what are we doing with the existing professors and how are we staffing for the new program? Is there an updated courses that they're taking to be able to, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the areas that's part of this new degree option is our machine learning degree option. And we currently have faculty that are teaching those classes. Our other faculty are right now in the process of going through various professional development courses and programs. Also, one thing that was highlighted with this new degree, the company Pure Imagination Studios, which is a studio known for a lot of high-profile entertainment projects and work, is going to be co-located within the new K. Aries Center, which this program will be located in. And we've already been working with their industry professionals, working with our faculty, collaborating on upskilling in some of these areas. So through that, and then we do anticipate, as the program grows, hiring new faculty in this area through both maybe adjunct and full instructor professor positions as the program grows. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I think that's a great partnership, having the industry guiding the program and having, it's not like they'll take 100% of the students, but at least they can definitely advise on how the industry is looking at the education. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Michael, for those additional details. And I appreciate the work that's taken place to look into those programs and improve them, and see how we can continue progressing in this area. So if there aren't any other questions or comments, we will go ahead and just keep this item on the board consent agenda for next time. Thank you. There is one item for inclusion in the board discussion agenda. Sam Christie Dangermond will present on the academic year 2024 performance reports. Sam?
Thanks, Chair Mendoza. So state statute sets forth the requirement that public post-secondary institutions must enter into a performance agreement with the Board of Regents. Further, the awarding of any new state funds to each institution is to be contingent upon each institution's compliance with that agreement as determined by the board and by the amount of funds available. This has been in place this way for about 20 years. In those earlier years, the agreements were fairly complicated with numerous indicators chosen to help measure progress towards system and institutional goals. The number of indicators for each institution ranged from anywhere from 6 to 19, and the indicators themselves varied widely as well. But over the years, work has been done to standardize those indicators with the most recent previous model, typically allowing institutions 6 with a choice of 3 common system indicators from among several to choose from, and 3 institution-specific indicators. But even so, over time, several limitations with that framework were identified. And I'm going to mention a few really quickly. They're also in the paper, but some indicators fell outside the scope of the board's strategic plan. Other indicators were selected maybe because an institution believed it would naturally meet the indicators rather than focusing on an attempt to improve in key areas. Some indicators were heavily affected by sharp enrollment increases and declines. And overall, performance expectations were fairly low. An institution that met the baseline on 4 out of 6 indicators, for example, or just 67%, received a 100% funding award, with institutions meeting just 3 having the option to make a case to qualify for the 100% funding tier. And finally, not having standardized indicators across all institutions resulted in a considerable amount of time devoted to performance funding by board staff and institutions alike, with 5 or 6 BASC meetings a year primarily devoted just to performance funding. So this past year, the board approved a projects-based performance funding model. This model facilitates the implementation of 4 proven practices that will help drive innovation, reduce achievement gaps, and enhance student success and completion for all students, and thus the practices are expected to help advance the board's strategic plan. Those practices are co-requisite support developmental education for both math and English, math pathways, or the pairing of a relevant gateway math general education course with each academic program on campus, system-wide course placement measures for math and English gateway courses, and the utilization of academic degree maps for advising purposes. Specifically, this year, 5 components of each report reflect how the institution will implement these best practices and include each institution. Each institution was expected to provide the following information as a part of their report. So the first of the 5 components was the process and timing required on campus to create and approve gateway math courses for math pathways into degree requirements, and a list of folks on campus who would be leading that work. The second component of the reports was the process and timing required on campus to create and approve co-requisite math developmental education support, as well as a list of people on campus who will lead that work. The third component, the process and timing required on campus to create and approve co-requisite English developmental support, and a list of individuals leading the work on campus. The fourth component of the reports had to do with the professional development that KBOR was to facilitate for these initiatives. So that fourth component was broken down into 2 pieces. The first was the list of individuals who would participate in the professional development for English and math co-requisite support developmental education, for math pathways, and for system-wide course placement measures for gateway and co-requisite math and English courses. The second part was a plan to make sure those folks who are unable to attend the sessions would still receive the information communicated at those sessions. Finally, the fifth component of the performance report was a landing page or a website with a link to the academic degree maps for each undergraduate program on campus. And degree maps were to be in a semester by semester format, and they were to reflect the new system-wide general education framework. So each of those components was worth 20% each, and each was evaluated per the scoring rubric on pages 26 and 27 of the agenda. If an institution satisfactorily completed each of the 5 components, that institution was recommended for 100% of any new funding available next July. In summary, 31 of the 30 institutions completed all requirements for the 5 components of the report and are recommended for full funding. There was one institution that did not meet all the requirements for the 5th component, the degree maps, and they are recommended to receive 90% of any new funding based on the performance report. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have before you proceed with discussion.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions? I don't specifically have a question, but I know there's been a tremendous amount of work that has taken place to make this happen. I know it hasn't been an easy task. It's been ongoing for quite some time, but I do believe the structure is going to be better for students in the system all around. So I just want to express my appreciation for the work that has taken place to make this happen. Any other questions, concerns, comments before we move on? All right, thank you, Sam.
None from me.
So we will move on to the next item under other matters. We have several reports and updates. First, we'll hear from Misty Knox again regarding the 2024 Kansas OER annual report. Misty?
Thank you. I would just defer to page 28 again of the agenda materials for a full summary and report of the open education initiatives. Today's annual report was created by the Open Educational Resources, also known as OER Steering Committee. The committee itself was created to encourage OER adoption across our Kansas public institutions. They bring together representatives from our Kansas public institutions who are committed to integrating OER into their course campus offerings. They convene once a month to discuss the statewide initiatives, including collaborative events, webinars, grant applications, system participation in regional and national OER organizations, OER platforms, and best practices. Today, I am pleased to introduce Barry Bailey. He's a long-standing member of our committee. He joins us from Johnson County Community College, where he serves as the associate professor and digital projects librarian. He will be leading today's annual report.
Hi, thanks. I'm a full-on professor now. That's exciting.
Congratulations.
We can advance to the next slide. And just really briefly, OER materials licensed for use and remixing, reusing, can cover textbooks, test banks, etc., and often available at no cost. If we make it to the next slide, we could talk about why people use them. Of course, we've covered the increase in textbook costs over several years, and also these materials, though freely available, vetted, created by working professors and education professionals, often lead to equal or better success. And of course, given the financial challenges of textbooks, often show greater impact with those who might face financial challenges themselves. So moving on, the steering committee itself was actually formed after a survey of textbook affordability, brought together representatives from the public institutions. And while we acknowledge that OER is not the single solution, it does create many opportunities for using and creating and contributing scholarly research and material to materials that are then freely available and obviously benefit students. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit about the survey itself. Sent out in March of 2024 to CAOs, who then passed it to delegates to answer questions. We've got 32 out of 33 public institutions responding, which is pretty great. And this was built off of the Iowa Department of Education survey, if you're ever interested in checking that out. So, OER initiative survey major findings. Let's see what we have here. We've got 7 out of 7 policies, 7 out of 7 universities with policies, programs, or committees in place. We've got community colleges, 10 to 15 supporting OER, and technical colleges don't have the similar initiatives. We do have future plans of 5 institutions without support that look to develop ones. One of the things that we started looking at last year was grant applications. A big challenge to OER is getting and securing funding from other outside resources. And so we've had 4 different institutions for a total of 6 grants apply for those. And 2 were only successfully funded. It's very hard to get a large scale coalition of partners to apply for these and get them funded. And we've actually found out that the state of Kansas, even with every institution on board, is actually a smaller competing entity than a lot of other of these cohorts that get together to apply. So yes, challenges, funding, time, resources. These often come up when we ask for information for what we might run into. And then we do, however, see that we've got improvement and adoption compared to what we've seen in previous years. So one of the things that we see that's actually different, we've received a notification that when we ask the follow-up question, who are these academic departments, that obviously participate in leading support. And we've received responses that the English department over time is the one that we get the most support from. Well, what we're actually finding this year is that we also have departments of business, mathematics, social sciences, and several others that are coming up in name more frequently than before. So that's actually good information to find out. It's no longer becoming that overwhelming English as the only represented department that we'd seen before. So that's nice. On to the next slide. These haven't really changed a whole lot as far as practices that are currently in place. One of the things that is nice to see, though, is a little bit more movement on the 7 universities and 2 community colleges that have incentive or mini grant programs themselves. These are often obviously much smaller pools of money than these national grants, but there is still an opportunity to reward or award those who are pursuing, creating, and implementing OER into their classrooms for making that choice and the effort that is necessary to put that into place. And I can say that since we've conducted that, JCCC has recently reinstituted its mini grant program that was previously canceled. So that is good to know for us. So if you're familiar with last year's report, libraries administrators are still the overwhelming people who are more aware of OER than others on campus. The biggest change in numbers were really in technical colleges, and the reason for changing was that more of them responded this year. So it's actually hopefully a better indicator than previous years of the overall level of awareness. And then this is a little bit interesting. So last year, we got so many people saying that 10% or more of instructors at their institutions were utilizing OER that we got curious and actually broke it up into further looking at 11 to 20% and then more than 20%. And so to see these higher numbers in the more than 20% range of instructors using OER was actually really encouraging. The other thing that I'll bring up on this is the idea of course marking. And we're seeing that we have several institutions doing course marking and others that plan on implementing it. And what course marking is, would be going in and when your students are looking to register for courses, they can see that, you know, these particular sections of these courses have some sort of indicator saying that they're using or that the course itself is zero textbook cost, meaning that there won't be any associated course material costs with that course. And OER is a big part of that. It's often worded to include other types of resources, like maybe they depend on library resources as well as OER. But it allows the students to see what they are running into, maybe help them choose if the cost of the course versus perhaps when it's scheduled is more important to them in their decision making, and help them make academic choices. Again, we talked about this, pursuing grants, 2 more grants reported than last year. And again, when we ask people why we aren't pursuing these grants, the lack of funding, the time to actually do it, but also, again, even when we do put them out there and ask, we often aren't a big enough competing entity. If the funding organization says you are able to support this many students if we fund you versus this many students if we fund someone else, it's a challenge that we run up against. So here's just some feedback from a few institutions that might be interesting to check out. Again, information to read at your leisure. If we move to the next slide, again, some more of those challenges that we run into when participating in this. So yeah, improvements in areas like faculty awareness, academic department leadership. We believe that the survey results continue to support the approach that we've taken in the types of support we're using, but also the grant applications and pursuing external funding really demonstrate the need for the statewide legislative ask that we have been making to sort of support these at the state level. Again, an initiative that the committee continues to investigate. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Barry. Any questions?
Regent Mendoza, this is Alicia Johnston. I did have just one quick question. I think it might be a misprint. On the community colleges that are participating in the OER initiative, it said 10 of 15. There's 19 community colleges. Is that just a misprint, or, I mean, is everybody aware of the OER opportunities?
Yes. And so if I'm remembering that slide, and I believe Misty's using older slides than what I'm looking at, so apologies. We were talking about those that have a policy program or committee to support OER. And the number that we have is 11 of 19 community colleges.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Also, I do think that I'm glad to see progress on OER. I really think it's critical when we talk about both affordability and quality for our students. So congratulations to your committee and the work that you've been doing. I think it's important work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hey, Barry, I did have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Regent Mendoza. I wanted to share that when we met with the students at the house maybe a year back, their biggest concern was access to books and the cost of the books. And I think this seems like a small but solution towards helping students in that area. I do see less involvement. There is involvement of libraries, but less involvement within that for the book, access to the books. And I'm glad that some of the courses are specifically specifying that books are not, physical books are not needed for the course. So all that, I see that it's helping the students. Yeah. But did we get a feedback from the students who have received benefit from this, that it is in fact helping them?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because we one of the slides that didn't make it in talked about the initiatives that we're currently working on, and we have several new subcommittees that we're working. The data subcommittee, which I chair, produces this report. But a new subcommittee called Student Testimonials is actually aiming to go collect that information to hear more about how it's impacting them. Again, we were founded based on a textbook affordability survey of students, where we received a lot of feedback back in 2019 about how, access codes, a literal quote, access codes are ruining my life. They're making decisions about whether or not they need to buy dinner or, their textbook. And we really hate to see that, but it's also 5-6-year-old data that we've collected. So recollecting current student testimonials, focusing on that, I hope makes a bigger impact when presented to, here or elsewhere, about the need for addressing this cost that they incur.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, I was wondering about, on one of your slides, it mentioned that students are less aware about OER. And then you talked about how they're coded, or there's some kind of label within the course catalog that shows that maybe textbooks aren't required. So can you help me understand how that correlates and how they're able to identify? I mean, I guess that there's a marker there, but what can we do about students, helping them become more aware? What thoughts do you have as to why maybe there isn't that awareness there?
I don't have a good analogy for this, but I don't think students really care that it's called OER. They care that if they take this class, they don't have to buy anything. And to be fair to them, you may just import the material into their course shell. You may hand them, relevant PDF. You may mix it in with licensed library resources. Again, the choice to call these course markings things like zero textbook cost instead of open educational resources allows the faculty the flexibility to designate their course as something that does not incur costs. And therefore, when the student gets to that level, again, they might not care that it was OER or not in it. There are a lot of benefits to specifically using OER, including the ability to adapt it and change it, make it more relevant and current to them, insert local examples to a textbook that was written for anyone to adopt, to really focus in. And I think hopefully this student testimonial subcommittee that's being formed might find some of those more specific ways beyond just being free, where the use of OER might have other benefits or reasons for students to be aware specifically that OER is OER. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does actually. So it's more about, they don't really, like you mentioned, they don't really care what it's called. They're just looking for those courses that are going to be maybe the most cost efficient for them when it comes to textbooks and that kind of thing. So they're aware they're there.
I think so, and hopefully we find out more specifically if that's the case with this subcommittee.
All right. Thank you for that report. And I know this again is tremendous work, and it's really helping alleviate some of those financial burdens that our students are experiencing. So I appreciate the work done on this.
Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move on? So next on our agenda is continuation of program review discussion. So in June 2023, the board revised its process for academic program review. We initiated a discussion about the new process and procedures at our September 18th meeting. Academic affairs staff drafted recommendations for revisions to academic program review based on that discussion, which we will consider now. So Vice President for Academic Affairs, Rusty Mulholland, please walk us through those recommendations.
Thank you, Regent Mendoza. Yeah, I think we had a very spirited and very productive conversation at the September meeting. Staff, we put together some draft recommendations for the BASC and then the board's consideration. I sent these recommendations out to all participants earlier this week. I can walk through them very quickly, just mention them, but I think we've been over them in pretty good detail last month. The first is to revise policy to provide a very clear explanation of the purpose of academic program review. I think it's our sense that having a very clear and well-defined purpose would benefit both the board and institutions about the work they're doing. The second is regarding interdisciplinary programs. Often institutions have create degrees that are not based on a formal department, but really bring faculty from across the campus together. And those are courses that already exist, but they've been structured in such a way that a student can earn a degree in an interdisciplinary field. So if we, given that there's very little or no cost to those programs, the recommendation, an institution that has a purely interdisciplinary program that does not have any formal departmental or administrative structure would not be subject to the minimum requirements for the number of both majors and graduates. We recommend that we reduce the threshold for the number of students enrolled in a master's degree from 20 down to 12. I think that's more in line with what other states do, and I think it would allow our institutions to continue to offer much needed and very important master's programs. It's our belief that you can have a very viable and strong program with 12 students in a master's degree program. We also are recommending that when a program offers both a master's degree and a doctoral degree, that program be reviewed as a single program rather than two distinct programs. We also recommend that there be some consideration to rethinking the minimum threshold for our institutions. Right now, the minima apply to all of our institutions, despite the differences in both size, number of students, budgets, and the mission. So using something along the lines of the Carnegie classifications to modify those minima for the institutions, I think would be a good response, a good approach to accounting for those differences in size and mission. We don't think it would mean separate standards for each institution. because, for example, KU and K-State are both R1 Carnegie classifications. They would have the same thresholds. I believe all of our Fort Hays, Pittsburgh, and Emporia have the same or very similar Carnegie classifications. I believe Wichita State is an R2, so it could be included along with KU and K-State. And finally, a recommendation that we include in the talent pipeline metric those students who, upon completion of their baccalaureate degree, immediately pursue graduate study. Right now, our metric leaves those students completely out of the mix. And I think we can all agree that it is necessary for a strong workforce, for a strong economy, to help grow and strengthen our state and the economy. We need those students to pursue graduate study in various fields. And right now, because they're not included, I think it reduces the impact that graduate programs have on the state's, on our talent pipeline. We would also recommend that we either not include or somehow account for these students when we look at the wage metric 5 years post-baccalaureate. A student who is pursuing a doctoral program may not show up at all, but a student who's completed a 2-year or 3-year master's program likely will, but now is 2 or 3 years behind those students who began as upon completion of their bachelor's degree. So those are our recommendations. Of course, these are draft recommendations. They can be revised or modified, or to the regent's content. But we offer these as a starting point for continued conversation about improving our academic program review to have it achieve the results the board desires.
Thank you, Dr. Monholland. So at this time, I want to open this up for discussion. Committee members, if you have thoughts or comments on these recommendations, and any provosts that may be present that have thoughts or comments, just as a reminder, please state your name before you speak. So I will open it up.
Good morning, Brent Thomas. I did have an opportunity to share the draft recommendations during our faculty senate meeting yesterday, and our folks were very positive on these recommendations, and we're very appreciative of the conversation.
Thank you.
Robert Klein, Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, KU Med Center. A couple of questions for Dr. Monholland and the regents. We have a group of clinical doctorates in a variety of areas, physical therapy, occupational therapy. They, I assume, will be considered as if they are PhD programs.
I don't think we distinguish them as EDD or PhD programs. They are doctoral programs. So yes, that would be my understanding.
The other question is, we have a very important clinical and translational science program that was just put in place. The minima for that are 3 students, and the maximum is 5. It is, we're off to a great start. There are 3 students in it already, but the approved minima is 3.
Approved by the board, or is this for accreditation?
By the board.
If that was approved by the board at the time that it approved the program, I it would be my recommendation that that program would not be subject to the other minima for master's programs or graduate programs.
It is a very important program, but it is very selective. It will also, many of the folks who will probably enroll in it will be physicians who are looking to move into clinical and translational science in terms of clinical trials that are essential for the medical center. And it may take them a while to complete the degree requirements because they're going to be practicing physicians, practicing nurses, practicing physical therapists. So it is unlikely to meet all the requirements, and that's why it was set up that way originally.
In my view, the regions have spoken on that that particular program. So
okay,
I would consider it exempt from those thresholds for the purpose of academic program review.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would agree with that.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
Barb Bickelmeyer from KU, and I just say I appreciate Rusty's work and effort and trying to understand the similarities and the distinctions between institutions. Thanks.
Thank
This
you
is
for
Jill Arnsdorf from Fort Hays State University. Excuse me, Regent Mendoza. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
Okay. I'm just going to say I echo what Barb said. One technical thing that we can explore further is the interdisciplinary programs. The question that comes to mind here is, would we determine those or would they be determined by the Kansas Board of Regents? That's a technical question that we can maybe handle down the road if these things pass, but that's a question I have in my mind with these recommendations. But certainly support this as progress forward.
I think you're right in that that's one that we can work through if we move forward with these. So thank you for that. Any other questions, concerns?
I have a question, Regent Mendoza, on the decrease of number of students that we are proposing from 20 to 12. Did we do a financial analysis of that suggestion? Do we know what's the cost of keeping the class up and running? And if we reduce it, this is about 60% decrease in revenue in that sense. How are we able to manage that decrease? Did we do a cost analysis on that?
We did not do a cost analysis from our from the academic affairs side of things. What we based this recommendation on, I did in part from my experience working in other states and collaborating with other, or communicating with other VPs for academic affairs from across the country. And I've seen a range of for master's degree programs, from 6 to 8 to 10 or 12. I had never seen one as high as 20. The point in my mind is you need sufficient students, sufficient number of students to keep the program viable. That is, to keep it vibrant so that there's a core, a nucleus of students that can engage with one another. The faculty can engage with them and have meaningful dialogue, meaningful discussion as the students move through their graduate work. It would be my position that if the program is not profitable, probably isn't the right word I want to use, but if it is not paying for itself at 12 students, then perhaps the provost or the institution needs to take a look at that program and see if it's viable at that level. This is, I don't know that, I'm not sure how to factor in, a cost analysis, because these are just minima. These are the baseline for the number of students that are enrolled in a program. It doesn't necessarily mean there can't be 20 or 30 students, but it sets a minimum number of students enrolled for institutions to point to in their process of reviewing the program to consider its feasibility and viability.
Okay. I also was thinking if there is a measure that we can do on the rate at which the student enrollment dropped, a percentage at which the drop has happened, that gives us an indication that there is some kind of an interest or the change in industry. So just throwing that out there. I don't want to create more work, but I do want us to achieve what we are trying to achieve, is trying to be more efficient with the staff that we have, the students that are coming in, and being able to operate the system. So if 12 is the base number for other universities, I'm game with that, but maybe we should also measure at, it was running at 100% capacity and then suddenly it decreased to 30% down or 40% down. And so that kind of should give us an idea where the market is moving or where the student interest is changing. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does, and I understand and agree with you. I think what this does is it takes some of the pressure or the onus off of institutions if they have a master's program that consistently enrolls 15 students and has a steady revenue stream and can be viewed as a viable, fiscally viable program. It keeps it, from cropping up all the time, and we don't have to point to that it's not meeting those threshold standards by moving it down to 12. Again, I think it's that's the responsibility of the institutions to make a determination that this program can be viable if we have a steady stream of 12 students. But it may be that some programs need a larger number than that, because of equipment costs or other overhead to maintain that program.
Right. Any other questions?
Regent
Comment?
Mendoza, this is Alicia Johnson. I would like to say I certainly appreciate your comments, Regent Parasker. I do think that, you're right, we have to look at cost. I also think that, some programs just lend themselves to having more students. Some programs, as we've already pointed out, cannot have as many students because of clinical requirements and the number of students that are allowed in those programs. I think that the recommendations that we have are good ones. I don't think we'll ever find measures that meet every single program that we have. There isn't a one size fits all here. And we also have programs that in terms of cost, they make up for the programs. Like if you constantly run 20 students in a master's program versus 10, well, they average out there at 15. And so if you look at universities, sometimes I think we might need to look at those kinds of things too. But I appreciate your comments because I think they're important. I appreciate what the provost's input has been on this. I think it's important. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the structure that we've set up for program review, but I do believe that making these adjustments, this is a very dynamic project, is something that's important if we're going to meet, our strategies, and that is to make this quality, affordable programming that meets the needs of the students. And so I wanted to say, I know it's been hard on everybody, but I think that this is a good move forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we need to discuss what action we need to take with this item. I don't know if we adopt the recommendations as an entire package with modifications as deemed necessary, for example, with the interdisciplinary recommendation, or if we want to go through and adopt each recommendation individually or do nothing and leave the process as it's currently written. I think we're maybe on board to move forward with the recommendations as a package, but my fellow regents, what are your guys' thoughts?
I'm good with moving it together as a full recommendation, as a package recommendation, but I'm open to whatever works the best.
Yeah, I'm pro that as well. Just keeping an eye on, the cost as well will help everybody, right? So I don't want to create more work, but being conscious about that would definitely encourage. That's what I would encourage to. So.
Okay, thank you. So I think, Dr. Monholland, we could go ahead and move forward with the recommendations as a package.
Excellent. We will see that this is added to the discussion agenda then for the upcoming board meeting.
Thank you. Our next topic is the continuation of the first 15 discussion. So in September, we initiated a conversation about the first 15 in pursuit of our goal of expanding dual and concurrent enrollment opportunities for all Kansas high school students. Academic affairs staff prepared a white paper on the issue, which includes several recommendations for our consideration. Dr. Monholland, will you walk us through this paper and the recommendations, please?
I'd be delighted to. Thank you. As you mentioned, the Regents aim to strengthen and expand early college programs and decrease inequity and variability in those programs for students. It's one of our major high priority goals for the academic year 2025. This is not the first time the board has taken up this effort. I think there have been numerous efforts in the past. There currently is a dual concurrent enrollment steering committee and has been working on these things. But I think the fact that the board has made this the first, it's at the very top of the list of the board goals for this academic year, is driving is evidence of the board's desire to, we need to no more talking, we need to start taking action and start making this happen. So we've put together this white paper. I won't go through all of it. It provides some background on kind of the state's involvement, the legislation involving dual and concurrent enrollment, offers definitions and how funding currently works. It discusses one of the successful programs we have, the Excel, Excel in Career Technical Education, which has been a very highly successful concurrent enrollment program. But we've created some parameters around which we've based our recommendations and where we would like to land as part of this initiative. So the first parameter is to identify 5 distinct courses that would comprise what we are referring to as the first 15. That is the first 15 credits a student could earn through dual or concurrent enrollment. The second parameter is that these courses, the first 15 courses, would be delivered without cost to the students. As part of this process, we would review student enrollment requirements. We would develop a standardized dual concurrent enrollment framework that applies to all Kansas school districts and dual concurrent enrollment providers, and that we implement the first 15 no later than fall of 2025. I don't think I have to argue very hard to convince people on this call that there's the strong evidence that early college programs, whether it's dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, or other such models, contribute to better student success outcomes, and not just for high achieving students. It can be beneficial for students from a range of academic records. Certainly, it can challenge high achieving students and gives them an opportunity to earn college credit, thus decreasing the time to complete a post-secondary credential and also saving money. But studies have shown that other students, those who perhaps don't have the highest grades at their school, can also benefit from the course's increased rigor because it demonstrates to them that they can be successful, that the course, that college level material is not only within their grasp, but within their capabilities and not reserved for others. One of the challenges or perhaps limitations with how dual concurrent enrollment is currently delivered is access and equity. Recent studies, our dual enrollment report notes that for both Hispanic and African American students between 2018 and 2023, the number of those students participating in early college programs has increased, but they comprise only 15% for Hispanic students and 3% for African American students. So they are underrepresented in dual enrollment compared to their percentage of total high school enrollment. The other part of access and equity comes in through just the accident of geography or zip code. Some students have the benefit of having a provider, literally across the street or across town, well within their reach of commuting or being provided transportation to that provider. Others do not have that. Other school districts do not have that proximity, and it creates greater difficulty for students in that high school to have their students participate in dual or concurrent enrollments. There's also not consistency in the costs of delivering or the costs that students may be responsible for taking a dual enrollment course. And that can, a student within a specific county may pay one price, and a student a few miles beyond that county's border would pay a different price. So what we would like to do is try to create some consistency so that there's not this very wide swing in tuition and fees charged to students. I'll skip now to the recommendations, which is really the heart of, I think, what the discussion is. The first recommendation is the region should designate 5 specific courses known as the First 15, that eligible high school students may take at no cost to them. We added a kind of a postscript to that to just for the purposes of consideration that since we've also implemented our general education, system-wide general education framework, that we might consider creating a dual enrollment framework that uses those gen ed buckets, so it provides students with flexibility depending on their choice of majors. The second recommendation is that the region should work collaboratively with school districts and dual concurrent enrollment providers to develop a funding framework that permits students to take first 15 courses at no cost to the student. The third is the regions should strongly encourage providers to expand first 15 offerings to areas currently unserved by any dual or current enrollment provider. As part of this process, the region should direct staff to make all necessary revisions to our dual and current enrollment policy to facilitate the expansion of these early college opportunities to all Kansas high schools, regardless of size and location. And then finally, the region should consider requiring all dual current enrollment providers to be accredited by the National Alliance of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships, or NACEP. It's our understanding that many institutional representatives have been discussing the creation of a state NACEP chapter. KBOR is a member of NACEP, and we think this would be a very positive development because NACEP accreditation signifies to consumers of dual enrollment that there is consistency in and great value in the dual enrollment programs that they're enrolled. So I will stop there, Regent Mendoza. Be happy to work through any questions that you and the other regents may have, or if there are questions from others on the call.
Thank you, Dr. Monholland. Before I open this up for discussion, I do want to remind everybody that this white paper is a draft. It's a starting point to have a conversation to see how we can make or how we can offer these 15 hours to students in an equitable manner. And so we're open to conversation. We want to use this to collaborate with stakeholders. So keep that in mind as we have this conversation or as we open this up for discussion. I'm going to open it up to the regents first. Comments, questions, concerns?
Regent Mendoza, this is Alicia Johnson. First, I have a quick question for Rusty or Vice President Monholland. If we create a state chapter of NACEP, then do all the institutions come under the umbrella of their accreditation, or are they still accredited individually?
I believe NACEP accredits individually. The chapter, a state chapter, would be a member of NACEP. KBOR is a member of the organization, which as I see it, means we're not being accredited, but we are supporters of the mission of NACEP, that we want to stay abreast of best practices and new developments in the field. And then it provides us with a network, a national network, when dealing with questions or concerns that arise around early college or concurrent enrollment programs.
I was just curious because I know like the state has a SARA agreement, which I think covers all the institutions. And I don't know that much about NASEP, just a little bit. I do think it's beneficial, but as anything goes, there's also a cost, not
Sure.
only the initial cost, but also to be able to have the personnel, the resources to be able to keep up with that type of accreditation. Sometimes can be can be a hurdle, especially for institutions that are smaller and don't have those kinds of resources available. So I was just curious if there's some way that the state could do that in a way that benefits all the institutions if we're going to require them to do that. My other thought on this.
Could I respond to that real quick?
Sure. Sorry.
I don't know if that's possible. It's been a few years since I've had really direct involvement with NASEP, but I think that's a question that certainly we could pursue to see if there could be some possibility, as you suggest. I understand, I certainly recognize that this NASEP accreditation would require additional resources and have an impact on institutions. But I also, as I am familiar with NASEP, their standards, their accreditation standards, mesh very closely with our current policy. So what it really would be doing, the accreditation would be providing to a broader audience evidence or proof that all our dual enrollment providers are in fact ensuring that the program is the equivalent of the college level course offered on campus, that there is the proper communication between the institution and the high school, and all of those other things that make it a truly dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, and high quality program.
That's good information. I think too that they pretty much align with HLC requirements in terms of when we talk about instructor credentials, as well as making sure that the course, expectations are the same regardless of modality or where they're held. And so, like I said, I just want to make sure that if we're going to require that again, if possible, there's an opportunity to have a statewide system that would allow that and not leave that to the individual resources. Sometimes that can be minimal for especially our smaller institutions. But I agree with what you say. I think it's important information, and the most important part would be able to allow people to see the quality that is there, and I think gives it credibility, and that's important. My other thought, and I know that there's a lot of people that have been working, many years on looking at concurrent and making sure that it's good. I do think if we are prescriptive and say these are the 5 courses, that's easy, but maybe not the most beneficial for the student, especially if we look at the things that we've recently done, implement math pathways, for instance. With math pathways, depending on the student's choice of degree path, they may not need college algebra. So I think it would be important to offer them, through the first 15, something that matches up with what they need. And so I like your idea of looking at the general ed framework buckets and maybe coming up with the concurrent framework as well. But I think that, as with anything, we're going to have some flexibility if we meet the needs of all of the students. And one of the concerns is when you talk about smaller, sometimes possibly rural institutions, there's such a small number of students that qualify, and especially as we look at the recent cut scores that we have for these courses, the fewer the number of students, as we've just talked about in program review, the fewer the number of students in those courses, the higher the cost per student, obviously, to be able to, for the institution to be able to make those available. And so I just think there's a lot of things out there. Everybody has a lot of needs, and I'm not sure we'll meet every one of them for sure, but I think those are things to keep in mind as we move forward and look at this, I think, very important topic.
Agreed. I appreciate those comments and we'll certainly keep them in mind if we are asked to move forward with this.
Thank you. Regent Parasker, did you have any questions or comments on this topic?
I concur with what Regent Johnson has shared, and I think this is going to be a fantastic program for many students if we put it right and deliver on the promise. So I'm all in.
Thank you. So I will go ahead and open it up to our community college partners for any thoughts, comments, or questions.
Thank you, Regent Mendoza. Seth Carter, Colby. I do have some questions, Vice President Mulholland. As we go through and we look at the recommendations for consideration on number 2, the Board of Regents should work collaboratively with school districts and dual concurrent enrollment providers to develop a funding framework that permits students to take the first 15 courses at no cost. What would be the funding mechanisms for colleges to receive reimbursement on delivering those services?
That's the whole point of the recommendation, for the regents to work collaboratively with your institutions and others to look at the current funding streams, what's available, and come up with a model that would permit us to offer those courses at no cost to the students. I'm not proposing that we do X, Y, or Z. I'm proposing, or we're proposing, that we all sit down around the table using these parameters as a starting point and come up with a solution that can achieve what we're seeking for the benefit of students.
Thank you, because it's just such a nuanced process to go through and to look at that. We pay dual concurrent enrollment faculty directly through Colby Community College, and to Regent Johnston's point, we serve some districts where they have 3 students in them. I pay that faculty member $1,950 per class that we're delivering. We're losing money already on those classes. So this is a very complicated situation. And going through and looking in this initial framework on the concurrent enrollment white paper document that was sent out, the presidents didn't receive this in the initial email. We received 2 BASC agendas, and this was not part of this. This was directly sent to the Vice President of Academics through the colleges. That's how we obtained this information. But to the best of my knowledge, there wasn't consultation with the community colleges to go through and create a collaborative process for this. So again, there's an awful lot to this, and we just want to make sure that point is illustrated.
I appreciate the comment and certainly take it to heart. That was the intent of the recommendation, that second recommendation. The paper, again, I think, as Regent Mendoza pointed out, this is a beginning point for a conversation, and one that's going to require us to get the right people around that table, start thinking about thinking creatively about how we can do this and move it forward.
Thank you, sir. And I do have 2 more questions. I apologize.
Sure, of course.
So on consideration number 3, the Board of Regents should strongly encourage dual concurrent enrollment providers to expand the first 15 offerings to areas currently underserved by any dual concurrent enrollment provider. So I went through and I pulled the service maps to go through and to show that, and every county within the 105 counties in the state of Kansas does have a service provider. The only exception being Pottawatomie County shows that it's not directly under K-State's umbrella there. But then if you look at it again, it shows that it's also secured by Manhattan Area Technical College. So I guess I'm not 100% sure what that statement means.
Are all Kansas high schools and all Kansas qualified high school students, do they have access to dual enrollment at this time?
Yes, sir. They would, under the service area maps. Yes, sir, they would.
Are they being delivered? It's our understanding that there are, I think, about 15 high schools throughout the state that have no agreement, that aren't being served. Moreover, there's, as I mentioned in the white paper, there's great disparity in the cost to the students for those programs. based upon, simple geography. You live in one county, you pay X, and if you live in another county, you pay a different amount. So that's an issue of access and equity that my staff and I have been directed by the board to try to address through this process.
Yes, sir. And I do think the different rates are reflective of the different agreements that are held within those districts, whether there's being direct payments made to those faculty members. I mean, there's all kinds of different variables in that equation. So I can't speak to every one of those, but I am aware of what you're saying. And then on the final, on recommendation number 6, wouldn't the Higher Learning Commission, wouldn't our accreditation through the Higher Learning Commission already address that situation? Because the HLC through the regional accreditation already goes through and directly addresses what it sounds like we're trying to accomplish in number 6. It seems redundant.
Yeah. I suppose there may be some redundancy there, but I think, couldn't you make the same claim about nursing accreditation then, or any other kind of accreditation? This is a specialized program. Dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, I think is distinct. It's unique. And I think it's important, it's my perspective anyway, that this accreditation would send an important message to consumers of dual enrollment, both students, institutions that may be receiving that student's credits in transfer, of the quality of the program, of the consistency and the value that's embedded in that program. So again, this is a recommendation. It's not a mandate. And I think this is something that, as part of an iterative process, as we begin working through this, could be part of a conversation, part of a discussion to try to create a very strong, a very high value dual concurrent enrollment framework for the entire state.
And thank you for that. So I do want to point out one important distinction between what you just referenced with nursing. Nursing requires a licensure. That's why there is a state accreditation. That's why there's a national accreditation. So students are able to move from state to state. Those
Excellent.
are very
I understand
different.
the point. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments?
Good morning. My name is Mickey McLeod. I serve as provost at Johnson County Community College and currently am serving as the chair of the KCIA group, the Group for Kansas Instructional Administrators. I will second a lot of what President Carter said, but I will also bring to the conversation 2 very important matters that we need to always keep in mind. The first that I've heard in some circles in conversation about this is the idea that there are colleges that are that have already worked out how to give free early college. I'd like to make sure that folks understand, if that is part of this thinking, that is not an accurate distinction. What colleges have done within the model of service areas that we have is looked at their fundraising and the money and scholarships they have in their foundation, coupled with the students they serve in the particular high schools, knowing the numbers of students in those high schools who have been qualified and ready. They have looked at the balance of what they've been able to fundraise and have provided scholarships for a number of students. So there is a balance here financially for every institution in the state. It is not simply the idea that there's enough surplus funding for us to just give things away for free. Nothing is ever free. Someone has to pay the cost. We have simply tried to figure out how to best provide some of those costs for our students who have the most need. Most of these programs, as is the one that we have on our campus, that fundraising is tied to free and reduced lunch and students of financial need who cannot afford. So we are providing better access to students who cannot afford to engage in early college, but who are academically ready. But that is balanced very carefully with the money that we are able to provide to do so. It is not simply that there's enough surplus funding sitting around everywhere in the state or even in Johnson County for us to just give things away. we have worked very carefully to balance the ledgers to make sure that we are very careful about our funding, and that we provide the best that we can for our students with what we are able to provide. And then secondly, there is this question of how far do we step when we are looking at this question of equity, because now we start to get into the question of individual community college trustees who have been elected and who set the tuition rates for the individual campuses being questioned in a manner that the state should be able to come in and tell them what they should be allowed to charge when you raise the question of different people are being paid different rates. That is tied to the funding of each individual campus and to the tuition rate set by the trustees of those colleges. And so it is not an arbitrary number that any of my colleagues have come up with on the back of a napkin. It is tied to their fiduciary responsibility as placed upon them by their presidents, as placed upon them by their communities and trustees. And so I want to be very, very careful with our language here that we are not creating a loosely or poorly funded mandate that pits local governments and trustees against state government and the regions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the comments, and certainly I think those are things to keep in mind as we begin having these conversations.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Barb Bickelmeyer, Provost at KU. I just mentioned, as you move forward, I really wanted to express my appreciation and recognition of Regent Johnston's comments about the recommendation item number 1A and about thinking about using the statewide gen ed framework for the first 15 for all the reasons that she mentioned, and just as students are thinking about majors, if they know they're going to go into engineering, for example, it might be helpful to make sure they're using their dual credit opportunities appropriately for that. So just wanted to note that I think was a really astute comment, and the more flexibility that we can provide within a structure, I think would be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. As with our previous topic, we need to decide our next steps on this item. The board has spoken clearly about expanding dual and concurrent enrollment. It's the first of our goals for academic year 2025. KBOR has for at least the past decade been working to develop a first 15 transfer. So I think I can confidently say this is one that we really need to focus on and come up with a plan. Having said that, as I stated earlier, this is a draft, just a starting point for conversation. As Dr. Mulholland said, we're not mandating anything. We need to get around the table and figure out how we can make these courses equitable and cost efficient for students across the entire state. I'm open to other suggestions, but I do recommend we direct staff to engage with all stakeholders to achieve the recommendations listed in the first 15 white paper. Other suggestions or? Okay, Dr. Mulholland, I think we can move forward with these recommendations.
Do you want to make that a formal motion and recommendation?
Okay. Sure. So do I have a motion to move forward?
I'll motion it.
Okay. A second. I think you're muted, Dr. Regent Johnston.
Apparently one of my core classes needs to be technology. Yeah, I have just a quick question, if we can just have a moment for discussion. So can you tell me what move forward means? I mean, in terms of timeline and exactly how we're going to do that. Is there going to be a committee then that looks at this? And maybe you could just speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Dr. Monholland, do you want to speak to it or you want me to?
Yeah, I can start. We have in place right now a steering committee, a dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment steering committee. And that would, I think, be a logical place to start. I think as President Carter and Provost McLeod have pointed out, this is a complex, complicated, and nuanced framework that we're talking about here. So I might want to recommend that out of that group, we create a smaller working group, that can come up with a framework and that addresses the concerns, that meets the parameters that the board has laid out, but creates a framework that can work for the institutions, works to the benefit of students, and helps us achieve our goal. The parameters mentioned at the start of the white paper, the board would like to see this implemented soon, and that they've set the fall of 2025. So the timeline would be very tight, would mean we would need to begin this work in earnest very soon. So we can provide a additional framework, a more formal timeline and structure moving forward, if that would be the committee's preference. But again, I think the key word in the recommendation is in number 2, collaboratively. Work with the providers, work with the school districts, because they're partners in this as well. Just work with all the stakeholders to come up with a solution that addresses the board's parameters.
Thank you. This is Alicia again. So thank you. I appreciate those comments. I was a little concerned when I see fall of 2025, because higher ed, we don't move as quickly as a cheetah. I do think that maybe a working group or something, just as long as it truly is a collaborative process where, and I know that you are committed to that as well. So knowing that, maybe we could get a timeline out to everybody that gives us maybe more comfort in knowing that, yes, this is going to be collaborative and these are the dates that we're trying to hit, to be able to initiate what we want to initiate as soon as possible. So with that said, I would second the motion to move this forward.
I think I have a couple of questions. President Carter, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. In regards to that, going through and working on that steering committee, Vice President Monholland, would the community colleges have an opportunity to go through and nominate who we would like to serve on that committee?
I'd be pleased. That would be, I think, a good approach. Yeah. I would not be comfortable trying to handpick people. I think you all have a better sense of the folks working in the trenches, so to speak, that understand the issues that we've been discussing. So I would be fully comfortable with that.
Thank you, sir. And then Vice President Simmons had put out a point that I do think it's important for us to all note. We will begin fall enrollment at the beginning of spring. So if we're looking at a fall 2025 initiative, we will have our cart a little bit before the horse as you go through and look at this, because we will be enrolling students already for this. So again, there's just a lot of moving parts to this.
And I think I understand that, and it's obviously valid. My goal would be maybe not to enroll students for the fall, but to have the framework implemented. It may have. I don't think that's actually in our recommendation, but that was in the parameters. Let me roll back up here. implement the first 15. So maybe it's parsing words here, but implement in my mind would be having the framework developed in place so that we could begin the process of enrolling students. And if that would mean, it would the first batch of students would actually enroll for the spring of, what year would that be? 2026. I think we've met the spirit of the Regent's intent here.
Thank you for the clarification, and thank you, Regent Mendoza, for allowing me to ask questions.
I believe Regent Prasker had a hard stop, so she is off the call. She made the motion. Regent Johnston seconded. Can we move forward with the vote, Dr. Monholland? Is that?
I think so. We still have a quorum, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the motion is to collaboratively move forward to work through the recommendations, establishing a timeline and a structure to be implemented in fall 2025, considering that that enrollment starts in spring and the different points we just discussed. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. So moving on, we have several updates from Academic Affairs. Academic Affairs staff has updates on system-wide initiatives. So first up is Dr. Jennifer Bonds-Raki.
Yeah, thank you so much, Regent Mendoza. Jennifer, can you share the PowerPoint, please? So while Jennifer Box is working on sharing the PowerPoint for the updates, I just want to thank the Regents for the opportunity to provide a very brief update today on math pathways and English initiatives with a focus on the KBOR-sponsored professional development series this fall semester. We can advance the slides. Our first table provides a summary of the number of institutions and individuals in attendance at each of the Math Pathways professional development sessions held so far this fall semester. We're very pleased with the high level of engagement across all events. So thanks so much to all of the institutions for their participation. I do want to point out that these figures do not include attendance at our monthly Math Pathways Task Force meetings, as well as some of the sessions that we've offered through other organizations like CAN and CACRO, which is the statewide meeting of our advisors and registrars. So in total, we've successfully provided professional development opportunities to over 1,000 participants. Next slide. Switching gears a little from Math Pathways to English initiatives, a system-wide English course placement measures committee was convened in July of 2024 and has met 5 times. The committee was charged with developing recommendations for system-wide placement measures for English Comp 1. And I'm pleased to report that this committee has finalized their recommendations, which will come to BASC for approval at our next meeting. We would like to offer a special thanks to all individuals who shared their time and expertise on this committee. And finally, I want to mention with our last slide that KBOR is also facilitating professional development sessions to assist English faculty in creating co-requisite developmental support for English Comp 1. Dr. Casey Reed from the University of Kansas, Dr. Melanie Burdick from Washburn University, and Dr. Kathy McCoskey from Butler Community College will be leading these sessions. Professional development will be offered for English faculty member on these dates, and faculty members can register for these sessions from the English Initiative subpage of the KBOR website. VP Monholland, would you like to add any comments, or I can stand for questions from the Regents?
I will just express my gratitude to Jen and Sam and really our whole team in Academic Affairs for the great work they've been doing. I think the attendance, the participation has been just outstanding. Very pleased to see those numbers. And it pleases me that the institutions are engaging in this way. I think it portends well for the overall success of these initiatives as we continue to move forward. So my thanks to my team for their great work, but also my gratitude to all the institutions who have been devoting additional time and effort to making this these initiatives come to fruition.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And I would concur with Dr. Monholland's words and thoughts of appreciation on that work. Do we have other updates, Dr. Monholland?
No, not today.
Okay, perfect. So as a reminder, BASC will meet November 20th at Kansas State University. If there are no, there's no other business to come before the committee, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, and I would second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.